There we are. We are live. Yay! Thank you for being here. We are today again with a new advent calendar item, and it's I think the how many is it? The 10 because we are the 10th of
Yep.
December. So absolutely amazing to have so many people who share their knowledge every day. And today we have something special, again, of course. But today we have a special guest from the UK, Ben Lee, and he is going to share Copilot building a Christmas joke engine. So I'm really curious about that. I think we all can have some laughing around it and learning from you about all the prompting that you are going to share with us. So I would say good luck and thank you for sharing with us.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. Okay. Alrighty. So yes, slightly weird session title, I guess. Building a Christmas joke engine, and I did, because I'm me, feel that I should add a little disclaimer on what we're going to do here. We do have a little bit of agenda setting later on, but you know, Christmas jokes, they may vary by region to region. There's no accounting for taste. The other thing is that that's my own taste, incidentally, says the person wearing the Windows XP Christmas jumper. The other thing is that I originally said that I would do this as a recorded session to submit, but then I was sat kind of pondering around how I might make this work, and decided that I would risk it and go for the live version of this. So, you know, demos are not really real demos. I have got kind of pre-seeds of content that I've done before. We will do some of it live, and the last little bit of actually kind of gluing the pieces together that we have built will be live. So let's see how we get on. This is me. This is my information down in the bottom corner there. You can contact me on Blue Sky or on LinkedIn. I am a head nerd at a company called Enable, who deal with cyber resiliency. So that is device management, cybersecurity, and recovery capabilities. And I contribute to the Office 365 for IT pros. But because this is Christmas, I've Christmas myself up as well, because, you know, I just needed to set the tone for this not very funny Copilot Christmas cracker workshop. So, what are we going to be doing? We are going to be making some possibly funny jokes. To do that, we are going to be looking at the M365 toolkit, as I've called it. And what I wanted to show was kind of how I interact with Copilot and other AI tools on a fairly regular basis. Kind of one of the problems that I see when we go through, or when I used to go through doing user adoption with people, is because there's quite such a kind of hype bubble, if you like, around AI, and AI is going to solve all of your problems and do all of the things for you, that can actually cause a bit of an issue, or can be a pitfall in adoption, because people will say to Copilot, hey, do this thing, and it comes back with something that is not quite right, not quite there, is 40% of what they needed, is not kind of that 80% of what we're aiming for with Copilot in terms of helping you get to the point that you wanted. And kind of the thing that people don't realize is that you can massage those results, you can work on it, you can do a little bit more with it. So that's what I wanted to kind of show today, was kind of some of the process that I go through. This is not a technically deep session. This is not kind of looking at, if you prompt in this way with these components, you're going to magically solve all of your Copilot user or usage issues. And this is certainly not a perfect way to do things. The reason I say that, and the reason I called this the Copilot toolbox, is there's many different ways that you can achieve the same result. You know, there are agents, there's frontier agents, there's Copilot Studio Lite, there's Copilot Studio Full, there's Foundry, there's notebooks, there's, you know, all these kind of things that are iterating and coming out around Copilot so quickly. So this is not a you should do this in this way. What I'm trying to do is just seed a little bit of a mindset of how I approach stuff, and maybe hopefully that will help you with how you approach things with Copilot. So before I get started, kind of before we get stuck in, really, one of the things I wanted to touch on was, this is kind of one of my favorite little snippets that I use when I've been doing kind of training and user adoption material. You know, back in the earlier days of Gen AI, and you probably still find them around on YouTube, there'll be lots of like, if you say this in this particular way, or the perfect way to structure your prompt, and you'll get the best answer out of it. You know, to me, one of the things that makes Gen AI interesting versus an algorithm is, an algorithm, you give it the same inputs, you will get the same outputs, subject to bugs in your code, obviously. Whereas the Gen AI, you give it the same inputs and you will get different outputs each time you run it, because of the way it kind of gets, from A to Z, working out the squishy stuff in the middle. But I did like this notion, and it comes from a Microsoft URL down the bottom there, which is the art and science of working with AI. And I quite like that it's combining that it is an art form with a science. And the science is a little bit more you need this, this, and this. And the art form is kind of a little bit more free flowing in interpretation. But this is kind of, I don't follow this perfectly myself, but this is quite a nice example, I find, of the things you need to include when you're talking to Copilot. So the goal, what is the output that you are looking for? The context, why do you need it to generate the thing that you need it to generate? Where should it be looking for your information? And, again, we've got in here, focus on email and Teams chat since June. That's one of Copilot's strong and weak points. The strong point being it has access to your email and your Teams chats. The weak point being that, I know this is stuff that's being worked on, but when you say since June, that doesn't guarantee that it will look at your email since June. There's kind of these fuzzy boundaries around time boxing sometimes. But then the expectations, the sandboxing of the delivery, the output. Why do you? We told it why you need it, but how do you expect it to come back with the content? And that feeds into these kind of common do's and don'ts that I see. So, I'm not necessarily going to read all of these here, but things like using a conversational tone. People wonder, well, why should I be polite in my prompt? And it's like, well, you don't necessarily need to be polite in your prompt. I've yet to make Copilot be massively rude to me, even though I've told it to be sarcastic and use dry humor when I'm getting it to sift through some of the content that I'm creating. But generally speaking, the tone and style of the inputs will shape the tone and style of the output. So that's a good reason to, within reason, use punctuation. Fortunately, spelling doesn't seem to matter, because my spelling when I'm thinking at typing speed is problematic. But other stuff in here, the important ones to me are those two at the bottom there. The check the output and iterate on your responses. I can't kind of drill home enough that checking the output is your responsibility for whatever content you get out of your LLM that you are using. And that other one as well around iterate on your responses is what people forget. Like I was talking to my boss a little while ago about using Loop to kind of capture people's travel plans, and he'd got them to email everybody into his mailbox their travel itineraries. And he said, so I was like, well, but you need to now sift through those. So go talk to Copilot, tell it to make you a table detailing which people are traveling when, which airport they're coming in and out of, when they've got layovers, whatever it is. And he asked it, hey, go identify the travel schedules for my team. And it came back with 4 out of the 7 people in the team. He's like, well, this is rubbish. This doesn't work. I was like, well, tell it that it missed off me. Tell it that it missed off whoever the other person was. So, follow up prompt. And it's like, oh, yeah, sorry. Here's now the detail about that. So it's combining those two that, with minimal additional effort, you still got to the output that you wanted, but you had to check it and you had to iterate. That ties in, I guess, with the, don't give up on the first try. This other one at the bottom here is quite important of don't provide conflicting inputs. Don't tell it to give you a brief, fully formed summary. You're telling it to have a fight with itself about what it should actually be doing. So anyway, that's kind of my guidelines for some of the things to consider to do and to not do. Where does this leave us with our joke generator? Well, where are we going to start? I think that for generating our jokes around Christmas, we need to talk to Copilot. So I've got my prompt here. I want to think about building a Christmas joke engine using Copilot. How might I start going about this? And if I can find the correct browser window, I have hopefully got this thread here, which is one I created earlier. Here, I want to think about building a Christmas joke engine with Copilot. How might I start going about this? Now, again, I'm sure some of the other sessions that you're going to see this week will, kind of explain more of this stuff in more detail. But just to set the scene, I am using this in web mode up at the top. I'm not using work mode because I don't want to pull any Christmas joke related information from inside my organization. And up at the top here, I am making sure that I'm using GPT-5 if you have the option still to opt into GPT-5 versus using it as your default. And I'm using auto in terms of how long it is going to think about the responses before it gives it to me. So here, I want to think about building a joke engine. What should I do? thought about it for 1 second. Clearly, I was worth a lot of thinking time, and that is a little hack here. If you want to do that, is you can append words like "think hard about this" if you want to trick the GPT-5 engine into taking a little bit longer about coming back with your response. So you can see what it's done is it's not really gone through any multi steps. It's just come back with a response for me. So let's see what I've got. So decide on the experience you want. Do I want to chat inside Teams? Do I want to have a Copilot plugin? Do I want to use Power Automate? Do I want to use a web app? Okay, fair questions. A joke schema. So this is getting a little bit more technical. What have I got? I've got my setup of what a joke might look like. I've got categories of things that will be included in my jokes. I've got some form of a rating system going on here. I've got a language that I'm using. And now I'm into options, building my first version. It's saying, well, I could use Copilot Studio. That's going to be the fastest option. I could go for Power Automate and SharePoint. I mean, that sounds quite technically complicated for making something that is meant to be a little bit on the daft side. Now I'm into prompt templates, etc., blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of stuff here. So let's kind of skip through. I'm bored of reading that now. So where do we want to go? Do we want to make a SharePoint list schema? Do we want to make a Copilot Studio topic? All right, okay, fine. So this is where I'm now starting to have a conversation in the context of the chat that we have already got. So when I ask it information, it maintains all of the stuff that's there. I want to keep this low code, so I want to understand how to make a good Christmas joke. Great. So now I've got some information here about, keep it festive, keep it short, wordplay, positive tone, audience. That doesn't sound too bad, but I know about this thing called Copilot Researcher, where it will go through multiple steps and give me a much more deep dive and reasoned answer to my question. So actually, instead of taking that to researcher myself, I'm saying here, can you give me a prompt that I can take into researcher to deep dive into what makes a good joke? And then I've got here my what makes a good joke, nice big prompt, and I can take that over to researcher. And here's the one I prepared earlier that I've got my research prompt. Down the bottom, if I scroll down a little bit, I can then see the process that this has gone through to think about the output. So you remember back in our basic chat, it just did first pass, here's my answer. This time I've gone through a whole heap of different steps. The other thing that's interesting is when I did that, generating a prompt to put in, it's obviously got enough context and it's clear enough that researcher hasn't felt the need to ask me any clarifying questions. Whereas here, when I was doing an earlier pass of it, it then asked me, great, you're looking to make English language Christmas jokes, but I need to know some more information to shape my output. What sort of thing are you looking for? Should I include linguistic or philosophical insights as to why they're funny? Should I focus on UK only, etc., etc.? And then I've given it my responses. I want 1 or 2 line jokes, explore what makes them funny, and I want it to be British and international English in terms of language. And then it's gone away and done its, kind of suggested output for me. So back on my big main chunk of research, if I scroll down here, you can see I've now got a super, super detailed exploration of why things are funny, and I guess your definition may vary on whether this will actually end up with something that is traditionally funny or not. But if I scroll down, I can see I've got my sources in here, so I can see where it's pulling content from. That's another thing when I was talking to researcher is, again, I made sure to turn off that I wasn't in work mode. So I wasn't looking through my emails, my SharePoint, any of my content. I just wanted to use kind of the stuff that it had inherently trained on and stuff out on the internet as my responses. And then where are we? If I keep going down the bottom here, wow, there's a lot of fun stuff in here. Down the bottom here, I've then got an option to save this out if I wanted to. Now, this is where, we talked about we're hopping between different copilots. If I carried on my conversation inside Researcher about building my agent, which I did in this thread here, it still uses the researcher deep thinking. So it goes away and does a massive kind of comprehensive stuff. That's not what I want anymore. I've done my high level, I've done my deep dive, and I want to take my deep dive and use it in the context of creating something else. So what I've done is click the Edit in Pages button here, which has then turned this into a loop component. One little thing to bear in mind when you make a loop component is I find in particular that it can take a little while to pop up in your loop workspaces, which is under loop.cloud.microsoft. So when you've used it, just if you want to then use that inside a Copilot prompt, or if you want to use it inside notebooks, I generally find you need about 20 minutes to kind of let stuff settle down. Alternatively, you can kind of then export this also into a Word document and take it to use it as a Word document as well. So anyway, I've got my researcher page. In fact, I've got two of them because I just did it twice. If I go back to my main thread and I have a little look down here, prompt for researcher. Great. So what I've then done is I have attached using the add work content, because there's a subtle difference. If I click on add work content, even though I'm in web only Copilot, I can still go in and pick stuff that I've been using from inside my M365. You'll notice here that I've got my key effectives of Christmas jokes. I named it R, so I know that it's a research thing. I ran out of characters to call it properly research. But that is subtly different to if I click on the attached cloud files. If I click on attached cloud files, you get, the sort of standard M365 cloud picker here. But if I search for research, or even just R dash, I won't find the loop files in this picker. So if you want to use loop and pages, you need to make sure you do that add work content. So anyway, I've attached that to this prompt, and then I've said, okay, here is the research of what makes a good joke. The next step is I want to look at generating a simple Christmas festive word list that I can use as inputs to my engine. So give me sample prompts that will help me generate them. So then it's saying here, based on, this is actually two of the kind of prior bits of research. This is what makes a good word list or a good joke. Down the bottom here, this is my prompt. Generate a comprehensive list of words, include Santa, elves, blah, blah, blah. This is what that output might look like. Okay, that's kind of all right, but I was thinking that I might want to add some sort of categorization so that I know whether these are traditions or animals or mythical creatures or whatever it may be. So I've followed up immediately with should I look at categorizing these? And it's like, yes, actually, that's not a bad idea. This is why we should do that. It's like, yeah, great, thanks. This is the bit I want. Suggested categories from the research. So here I'm saying, okay, now give me a prompt to generate 500 festive words with no repetition and place them into categories. This is now my prompt to go and generate those things. Now, another challenge with Copilot, if I go into this thread here for my word list, again, you'll see this is kind of slightly different prompting that I've been using. Where are we? Here, I've said, I want you to make me a list of about 500 Christmas terms, etc. It's gone away and done some of this. This was not my kind of refined prompt with it. I want it in categories in this format. But you can see here, it's offering to generate me a Excel file or a CSV file that I can then save and store. This is where we have a little bit of a challenge with using Copilot kind of in this mode. And even if I used it inside Excel, it wouldn't be able to directly manipulate and kind of create the content inside the Excel file for me. It's generated a file that isn't in my OneDrive. I can click on that and download it and then save it into my OneDrive. Now, this is where agent mode and Excel can kind of come in and help solve this a little bit. If I show you, this is an example of one of those contents that I got here. So you can see I've got my category, I've got my term, and I've got my notes. And it's kind of gone through, and it's not done a bad job of generating a bunch of stuff here. This feels like I've got kind of, the guts of what might make my joke engine kind of come to life. So find where I am in my threads, 500 words, blah, 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 blah. I want it to be structured into a CSV or Excel. Okay, and this is where I got to. So the next bit that I did is I wanted to take this into Excel itself and test out the agent mode. Agent mode in Excel is something that is a new feature. It's part of the Frontier thing, which is if you have an M365 Copilot license in your tenant and you meet certain criteria. It used to be that you had to opt your tenant in. I don't believe that is the case anymore. But you can get at agent mode. Agent mode is hidden away a little bit. So one of the ways that you can find it, if I go into agent output, is if you go to the Copilot pane down the right-hand side, you should, when this kind of hits more mainstream, that you'll be able to hit this little kind of icon here and say, I want to include another agent in my conversation that I'm having here. Now, for some reason, this at the moment is hidden away behind Excel Labs. So if you don't have that, it is only in the web version at the moment. Go in and there's a little video that I can link to. You can add this button into your toolbar to see the Excel Labs, and then you hit that you want agent mode, and you get this Copilot prompt down the side here. Agent mode is massively more powerful than what we've seen with Copilot inside Excel in the past, because it can directly manipulate data, work on stuff, generate things, move stuff around, create formulas, deal with all of the information in your spreadsheet. So this spreadsheet here is where I took a prompt and incorporated it into agent mode. So you can see here that I've got different festive tags. I've got a pun map, which has, if I scroll across, then taken a bunch of my festive words, generated some puns from it. It's explored what the actual pun is that the type of pun, the double meaning, it's a twist, whether it's a rhyme. I've got different kind of constructions of what makes up phrases to use in my joke. So you can see I've got Gloria in Excelsis broken up into Gloria in Excelsis. I've got a familiarity rating that it decided would be kind of useful for me to include on here. I'm guessing if I ask it for more popular jokes, it might pick terms that are more familiar. I've got templates that are kind of common constructions of what might make up the components of a joke. You can see I've not got super many of these, so I could maybe, I've even got some duplicates in here, so I might need to tighten up my prompting to say, remove any duplicates. Or there was one of these conversations when I said, why have you generated me 20 of the same thing or 50 of the same thing? And it was like, well, you told me that, I needed to make 300 of them and I only had 250, so I filled the rest in with blanks. So just, bear that in mind when you're working with it. Anyway, so we've now got all of this stuff here. So what are we going to do with that? Let's hop back onto our PowerPoint and just catch up with where we were. So we've got our researcher prompt, we've got our word list, we've got our part 2 of the word list, we've got agent mode, we have done the stuff in agent mode. Okay, so now we want to take this into Copilot Studio and start actually building our Christmas agent here. So let's go way down to the bottom. So paste this in. I've got my data. I want a short outline prompt that I can use for seeding a joke agent. Don't give me specific construction information. I only want to set up so that I can tell my new agent this. So I'm going to take my prompt and I'm going to duplicate my tab. I am going to go into a new agent. And I am going to paste this into my describing an agent. Okay, and you can see this is kind of seeded stuff here. Do I want the name to be Christmas Cracker Jokes? Sure, name sounds good. And I've got my little kind of prompts on the right-hand side for what I might want to use. And this time I'm now going to go into configure, and I'm going to have a look at my sources. So in my sources, I want to include the internet, because why not? And I want to also include my joke generator files. So I have stored all of these in a, agent is already using this item. That's not what I wanted. Go away. I want files. And what did I call my files? I called my files joke source 1 and joke source 2 because joke source. Away, come on. Never do stuff live. Never mind. Let's point it at our Fun Times library instead. I do want to generate images, and I'll explain for why in just a second. If I go back here, I'm going to say I have added a SharePoint source that contains Christmas words and information about how to generate a joke. Use them as part of the instructions. See what I've got. URL is invalid. Amazing. Okay, tell you what. Let's break out the here's one I did earlier. So I'm going to edit this one instead. So on my configure, you can see down in my knowledge source, I've now got my pun map that I've had expanded, and I've got my research of what are the good components about making a Christmas joke. And I've told it in my instructions, in fact, back in the kind of main Copilot thread, I've told it that I've attached this file and this contains the information or the building blocks of the joke. And then I've got this file, which is the structure for how you should construct the joke. And then it's built in some guardrails, which is interesting. So you can see here, all jokes must be PG inclusive, avoiding rude stuff, don't be edgy. So Copilot by itself, when I was kind of constructing this, has put in a reasonable set of kind of safety rails around this stuff. So anyway, that I think is my joke engine ready to go. The only other bit that I've put in here is I did add in the image generation and said, if the user wants to generate a cartoon, offer to do that, and it will then go and generate a picture for me. So without further ado, let's take my output. And I told it here to, let's do this live. Told it that I wanted to give me a joke that I can tell to Femke about she is a Copilot superstar. Let's see what I get here. So why did Santa hire Copilots? Because even his sleigh needed an upgrade to the autocomplete. Yeah, not really. Let's try another one. Why did Santa switch to Copilot for his naughty list? Because he needed help with code sleigh security? Eh? No? Are we improving? Not quite. I'll show you the ones that my testing generated. So originally, I'd had this thing about Femke being a whiz with all things M365, and that was kind of throwing my output a little bit. Told it that wasn't great. I wanted it to try again. It made a Teams joke. But here, when I shortened it, this time I got a, why did Santa ask Femke to join in his workshop? Because even the elves needed a Copilot to slay their deadlines. I was pretty pleased with that one. I think that one worked okay. And then next up, I tried it for give me a joke I can tell my 6-year-old. What does snowman eat for breakfast? Snowflakes. And then I tried a little bit more detail here. Give me a joke to tell my 6-year-old he loves snow leopards. What do snow leopards sing at Christmas? Frosty the Snowcat. Yeah? No? I think that's okay. And then it asked me, I said I wanted to make a picture for that. This was my mistake because I quit the thread while it was processing. So I asked it again, and this is my festive snow leopard singing out loud. So that is a wrap for my how to make a joke engine using Copilot. Look, like I said at the start, this wasn't meant to be a technical deep dive. This wasn't meant to have any amazing kind of highlights or kind of revelation moments. I just thought it might be quite interesting to show sort of some of the mental discovery process that I go through when I'm working on Copilot, and to get across that point around iteration and it's a little bit of a pain at the moment here that, these Copilots can all be quite different. The stuff you get in one versus Researcher versus in Excel is different. But this is where, watch this space. This is one of the things that kind of agent mode and agents in Copilot and other AI tooling is looking at solving, where we will have a general AI that can then interop and go kind of farm out more of these tasks to other agents behind the scenes to get the job done. So apologies for the bad humor. Thank you for bearing with me with the demos. And that, as they say, is that. Have a good Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. I really, really love jokes around that you built and that you share with us. And it was really fun to see how you actually used Copilot to build your agents and give it instructions. And I think a lot of people can learn from that. So thank you for this use case to make it really fun. And have a nice Christmas.
Thank you very much for having me.
And if someone has some questions, probably they can reach out to you on LinkedIn, I think.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm happy to chat about anything and all things and nothing.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.